Hi and welcome. In this video we'll be looking at Web Screen Configurator in terms of triggers, so things that activate the configuration in any given screen. The first example I've got here, again these are all kind of customer driven, is the account reconciliation screen. So a customer wanted an extra column, which I've represented here with DA true, to be able to differentiate between a set of different transaction types. Now you can't use the filter because he wanted more than one transaction type to be included, and essentially the solution was to create a column that looks to see if the transaction type is one of a number of values, and if so it will have a 1 in the column, otherwise it will be a 0, and then you can filter by the 1 or 0 in this extra column. So let me show you how this works first. If I go to the account, press space and then select my account and then tab, click on load, which loads this transactions table, and you can see straight away I've got DA true and it's got a 0 for, it's got a 1 for the line, it's got a DA, and it's got a 0 for the other lines. So the way this works then is this triggers as soon as I click the load button. It can't be triggered by the table itself because no changes are made in the table. It can't be triggered by the account because the information in the table isn't there yet. So it's load that is required. And what we can see in the debug here, which is the most useful thing, and actually isn't there when you first go into the screen. If I just clear this screen, you'll see that you've got all this debug information, but if I go right down to the bottom where you have the actions, there you go, here's our different actions. We have load, but we don't have load filter as an action. We don't actually see that until we press the actual load button. So this is a situation, and there it is, load filter. This is a situation where we can't get our trigger indicator until we've actually clicked on that trigger. So what I want is for load to then populate this column. So if we go to the Web Screen Configurator, here's our account reconciliation master file. In visibility, I have my DA true field name in the table section that creates that column as read only. In the titles, I've given it a name of DA true, DA being the transaction type. And in autofill, here's the important bit. So I've got my SQL that indicates what value is going to be given when a certain transaction type is spotted. But in here, the source field, so this source section and source field, this is my trigger for this to happen. The trigger activates the target, which is my field. And I've got action, colon, and it's load filter. So that value that we saw here on action, load filter. So that is what makes this appear, or that information autofill when load is clicked. Okay, the second example is going to be the posting and registration of GL transaction screen. In this screen in desktop, you know which posting cycle or transaction type you've chosen because the tab becomes that name, and then you can click change posting cycle to change it if you want to. In web, you've got no indication after you've chosen the posting cycle which one you've actually chosen. So a fix to that is what we can see here. So I've got a transaction type field that's been created. I've also got a ruler line that's been created. Now if I just close this screen and reopen it again, so again we've got our debug switched on. We have this section with our transaction type choice, and when I choose one of these, let's choose for example manual payments, that triggers this transaction type to be updated into this screen. So to show you the setup of that, if I go back to my Web Screen Configurator, there's my master file. So visibility, I've got my header section, which is read only, and my ruler. And the thing that makes that a ruler, if I go across to the right hand side, is the control type. So in the installation manual, there is a control type table. It tells you how to create a ruler, a date, a button, different types of elements in the screen other than just a regular field. The user's full width is what makes the field, the actual header field, span the full width. The titles, of course, are given the header information, so a title, which is transaction type, which is what you can see at the top. And finally, the autofill, I've got the section that is being clicked into or changed. That is what is triggering this target field to populate. And then there's my SQL, which gets the voucher type description based on the choice in the posting cycle. So it's just the general section. So anything that's clicked in here, because of course they could click on, again, if I just close this and reopen it, there we go. They could click on any one of these lines, so it has to be the section itself. So any activation or activity in the section will change this transaction type and activate that autofill. Right, the third option we have here, if I close this, is the supplier screen. There's a lot going on in here, so I'm just going to pinpoint the thing that is most relevant. Is this box here. So a client wanted to be able to have a box. They could click a button, or the button was the solution, but they wanted to have fields that would show the current open items for a given supplier, the total. So what we've got is two elements here. Well, we've got three. We've got a ruler to separate this section. Then we have the field where the information is going to be, and then we have a button. So how this works is, and actually I'll show you it active. If I click on Get Invoices for Staples Inc., there we go. There's -1057, and if we look at maintenance of open items for that same supplier, we can see that is the correct sum. So how this works with the supplier's master file, again, visibility, and again, lots going on here, but the things here, the ruler, the current invoice amount field, and the Get Current Invoices button. And again, the thing that decides whether these are rulers, fields, and buttons across the right-hand side is these control types. Okay, so that's a ruler, that's the field, but it's been set to 0.2, that means 2 decimal places. And that 8 is an amount, and 7 is the button. And the button has this command on it, which is get cur inv. So if this command is triggered, so that's our trigger, then when this button is clicked, it will trigger the autofill that matches that same command. All right, the titles, I've got my current invoice amount, which is there. I've also got a tooltip on there, so if you hover over, it tells you what to do. I've got my Get Invoices, so that's those two titles. And finally, in autofill, again, a lot going on here, but the one we're interested in is this one here. So the supplier field action get cur inv. I don't think I actually even need that supplier field, but that will trigger this field to be populated based on this SQL, which is to sum the amounts from the ASU trans table. So there we go. So a couple of different ways to get a trigger. Trigger by a section, trigger by an existing action like load, and in this case triggered by a button.